Hey, FreightWaves fans and friends, welcome to our Friday edition of FreightWaves Now, where we're bringing it live to you every single business day. And we're going into the weekend, so this is not only good for right now, it's also good as we look ahead at the Saturday and Sunday. Today we're talking about what to expect in weather, and we're talking about a little economic contract rates. What to expect. We've heard some that you could expect maybe a bullish approach, expectation in spite of how much rates rose in 2018. But will they? And we're going to find out today when we talk to market expert John Paul Hampstead. So first, let's talk to Nick Austin, chief meteorologist of FreightWaves. What can we expect right now, as well as heading into the weekend?
Chad, you're looking at it right here. Big blob right in the middle of the country. Our nation's heartland.
It's as if you're creating the weather.
That's right, but I'm not. But anyway, it's been raining there all day. Kansas, other parts of the plains, but it's changing to snow. Copious amounts of snow tonight. Talking about some areas of 5 to 10 inches of snowfall.
Right there.
Right across the plains into Indianapolis, Cincinnati, and
fun for
St.
the kids
Louis.
to go sledding, but very difficult and treacherous for
driving. That's absolutely correct. And I mean, this is a pretty major snowstorm for some of those cities.
Okay.
St. Louis, especially St. Louis. From around St. Louis over to Cincinnati, there are winter storm warnings up from the Weather Service. Where some of those heaviest snow amounts are going to be. There'll be some areas of freezing rain and ice mixed in there too, and some sleet. But St. Louis has not seen more than 6 inches of snow from a single storm since 2014. So this is going to be a pretty big storm for St. Louis.
Yes.
And some of those other areas that I mentioned as well.
Kansas and Missouri just looks completely obliterated.
It's going to look like that. I mean, roads are going to be treacherous, and it's just going to be a big mess.
Okay.
And that's mainly tonight through tomorrow, and then Saturday night and Sunday, that's going to kind of move to areas east of the Ohio River Valley, over into parts of Virginia. The southern Appalachians.
Oh, it's going to move. It's going to move
that
strongly
way.
East. Okay.
Strongly east towards the Mid-Atlantic. Yeah. And some of the southern Appalachians, like the mountains of western North Carolina, that got slammed by that big winter storm back in early December.
Right.
They're going to get hit again with snow and probably ice too. That's west of the Charlotte area.
Okay.
The city of Charlotte should be okay. But
so nationwide, is that the main thing that we're looking at?
That's the main thing. There's also heavy rain coming into the Los Angeles market, which has been really hot lately. A lot of volume coming out of Los Angeles lately. So they're going to get hit by heavy rain. And the mountains east of Los Angeles are going to get a pretty good amount of snow. That's going to be for tonight and into the early part of Saturday.
Okay.
And then the rest of the weekend should be pretty quiet across the whole country. That big snowstorm that we were talking about earlier
in the Northeast,
that's going to be moving towards the Mid-Atlantic on Saturday, or not Sunday rather, and then probably by Sunday night it's going to be gone.
Okay.
But that's really the big weather story. That and the rain in Southern California later on tonight. The rest of the country is going to be pretty quiet.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Well, thanks for that, Nick. That is fantastic, bringing it to us really every single day this week. Lots of things going on. You can't make the weather, but you can prepare for it. And now we are visited by a market expert from editorial, John Paul Hampstead, otherwise known as JP. JP, you've been talking to a lot of brokers and analysts this week, just kind of saving up all that you've learned. What's happening right now, though?
Okay, so just a little bit of background. I keep reading these reports from economists, from transportation equities analysts, and from asset-based carriers that are really bullish on contract rates in 2019. People are calling for 3 to 5% increases in contract rates. However, I think personally that that's unlikely based on my conversations this week with freight brokers. First, though, I want to talk about kind of the underlying economic reasons why we don't expect there to be major contract rate increases next year. And that has to do with increases in capacity.
Okay, tell us about the index that you have pulled up here.
Yeah, so we have two.
Okay.
This orange line that's stepping up and down is government data on truck drivers.
And that's the EMPN.
Yeah, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Okay.
And and that's updated every month, and you can see it's sort of chunky.
And you've got that cross compared with
our own proprietary capacity estimate. It's created by our data scientist Sam Tibbs, which basically combines hours of service utilization with diesel fuel consumption on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's an attempt to get a glimpse into the capacity situation, in a kind of more of a real-time way. You'll notice that there's been a significant increase in capacity over the course of the second half of 2018 as truck driver wages rose approximately 12%, and especially small fleets were able to add trucks fairly easily. We talked about the record Class A truck orders, things like that.
Yes.
So with capacity growing, the brokers I've talked to have said that the market, even though volume has turned back on, volumes are really robust to begin the new year. There's so many trucks out there that loads are flying off the board. Brokers aren't having to make too many outbound calls to cover these loads. And the brokers who are interested in securing contract freight, not all of them are, some brokers just play in the spot market, but the large brokerages who talk to shippers and try to secure those big accounts has said that they've come in quite aggressively to secure that freight in 2019. They're talking about decreases of 3% in order to get capacity in what many expect could be kind of an off year for freight, especially compared to 2018.
But that contrasts with like a report that we had published on FreightWaves Now from Donald Broughton at the beginning of this week, in which he kind of laid out the groundwork for how amazingly rates did rise in 2018. Right, historically they never rose as much as they have in the trucking industry of all time in 2018.
And even I was talking to Craig Fuller, our CEO, yesterday, and he used the phrase that carriers had kind of gotten out over their skis. That 15 to 18% increase was a little much. If you go to this next chart, this kind of explains why I think that there will be downward pressure on contract rates going into 2019. What we have here on the blue line is the DAT Van Freight Rate Index from Los Angeles to Dallas. These are spot rates for trucks going from LA to Dallas. Comparing that to the orange line is OTRI-LAX-DAL, which is the percentage of loads being rejected by carriers on that same lane, LA to Dallas. And essentially, as contract rates were repriced really aggressively multiple times over the course of the year, that held OTRI down. So, if you don't want my freight, if you're rejecting this load that I'm tendering you, I'll increase the price, and then you'll be more likely to accept it. So we saw OTRI trend down over the course of the year as contract got more expensive. Right now, OTRI is so far below, where it's on this long sort of downward slide, and spot rates are also, this is a spot rate that's also pretty far below contract. At one point, at the end of 2018, spot rates were about 23 cents a mile below contract. So I think that pulls contract down. I think that
and contract now, as my understanding is, carriers don't want to reset the terms of contracts prices at the beginning of the year.
Right, and that's what's interesting. Just depending on how volatile the market is, we can see contracts repriced several times. I mean, I was talking to a senior sales executive at C.H. Robinson yesterday who said that he's actually advising people to rebid for truckload on a quarterly basis next year, just to minimize service failures and to make sure that they're getting all the freight that they need.
One of the things too that, and just to back up a tiny bit, is like we are seeing this whole week we've been kind of charting day in and day out the volume uptick, but yet our thesis right now, such as we're seeing it, is that it is maybe artificial to some extent, getting ahead of the tariffs.
In some markets, it's weird and artificial. I mean, the LA freight market is behaving really weirdly right now. It's essentially, there's about 1.8 billion square feet of warehouse capacity in Southern California. and it's pretty much all full. And yet there's still a robust, not crazy, but a robust amount of freight coming into the port. And all of that is having to be dumped into secondary markets like Stockton, Modesto, Phoenix. Shippers are looking for any warehouse space they can find. And so they're putting it in there. We've seen a huge surge in outbound volume from LA, but it's not correlated to a massive surge in port activity. It's really about repositioning freight, trying to cram it into the network anywhere they can.
Which it's possible that they're just trying to get ahead of the extended deadline of the tariffs going out into March. No one really knows. We don't even really know what's going to happen with whether or not that deadline will be extended again, or if anything will be negotiated. But it's certainly that may be affecting volumes.
Yeah, I mean, and again, in certain places, Joliet and Chicago are also very cloggy, in terms of the warehouse situation.
Right.
I will say that national volumes, overall are healthy. They're back to where they should have been, where they were in November, December. It's only in LA that we're really seeing like record kind of peaky things. I mean, there are other port cities are also performing well. Even places like San Francisco and Houston are seeing a decent amount of freight come out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There are lots of signs of health for our economy. While there's lots of uncertainty in the global market, especially in Asia. So it's completely possible that we will have lots of strong manufacturing data, lots of things continuing to expand in 2019, which is why some theorize that in quarter 2 or 3, contract, rates for freight may actually, in fact, go up.
Yeah, and I will give Donald Broughton some credit. I think he has a sort of an interesting thesis. Most economists and most equities market watchers think that we're sort of at the tail end of a really long economic expansion that began in 2009 and 10. And therefore, there's only so much slack left in the economy. Unemployment is so low. How much more can things grow? Broughton's perspective is that actually we're only 2 years into a bullish freight market that began after 2016, which was like a mini freight, a sort of a sectoral recession.
Mini recession.
So he kind of thinks that we're already in a different cycle, and I think that's what's making him more bullish than a lot of other people. I don't know exactly what to think about it. I don't have the expertise to evaluate that thesis. I just think it's interesting and worth mentioning.
Yeah, I think that, and I think that his theory is that later in the year it wouldn't be shocking if, in fact, there was some tiny bit of continued growth, maybe in the 3 to 5%. But right now, what you say you're seeing, the theory this week, right now, brokers and analysts are saying kind of the opposite.
Yeah, the brokers really want contracted freight, which makes me think that they're skeptical of how the spot market's going to perform, and they're coming in with aggressively low prices to lock that up. That's kind of what I'm seeing. I mean, obviously in June we expect surges in volume and prices, but I mean, overall, I don't see how we can keep, growing off of what was a really crazy 2018.
A really crazy 2018. Thanks so much, JP. We are bringing it to you every single business day. So this is our, weekend wrap up here on Friday. And, we want you to stay informed, keep on top of things. So, Monday morning, we are going to tell you how much, things might have changed over the course of the weekend, which is actually usually a soft time anyway, cyclically on the weekly cycle. So, stay safe out there, stay tuned, and we'll keep bringing it to you each and every day. Don't worry, be happy.